Tonight on Mississippi Insight, the countdown to Election Day. Is the state prepared for a surge at the polls? Secretary of State Michael Watson is here to tell us what voters need to know and how his office is planning to keep your vote safe and keep you safe at the polls. And Cindy Hyde-Smith one-on-one on the key issues in the biggest race this year, the battle for U.S. Senate. Good evening, I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. Election Day is just fast approaching, and November 3rd is just over 2 weeks away, but ballots are already being cast here in Mississippi. Recently, I sat down with the Secretary of State to talk about the plan for the biggest election day in a long time. And joining me now is Secretary Watson with the Secretary of State's office, and we're just weeks away from the election day. Talk to me about what is the most pressing issue for your office right now.
Yeah, so, we just passed a couple of major deadlines, obviously voter registration and others. So now it really is turning the focus to November 3rd, making sure that all of our counties have what they need. Just last week, we shipped out all of our PPE that we've been talking about for quite some time now. We finalized our administrative rules for Election Day, making sure that poll workers will have masks on. So it's things like that, tuning up for the final countdown to November 3rd. And again, we're seeing a skyrocket number in absentee voting. So it's talking to our clerks, making sure they have everything they need and making sure they're prepared again on November 3rd.
We've had a number of absentee voting numbers for weeks now. What are the figures looking like for absentee voting so far?
Yeah, so yesterday we surpassed 101,000 requested. If you look back at 2016, we had 110 total. So we're going to fly by that number, obviously with just about 3 weeks left. And you look at down on the coast has been a tremendous turnout. Jackson County has already surpassed their number. Harrison County is getting close. I was in DeSoto yesterday visiting with Miss Dell, and they're getting really close to DeSoto County as well. So every county we've talked to and visited with, those numbers are going to surpass, I think, the number we saw in 2016. And you're going to see a statewide turnout. In my opinion, it's going to be a big, big number.
When it comes to counting those absentee votes, is that the day of the election? How is it going to work here in Mississippi?
That's right. So in HB 1521 this year, the legislature changed how we go about the absentee process. So your absentee vote is the final vote, as opposed to you could come back on election day. And under previous law, now once you cast an absentee ballot, you cannot come back on election day and change your mind. So the other thing that they did was those will be processed at the circuit clerk's office. So no longer will they have to go through those ballots and separate them by precinct, send them out. Poll workers who have worked 13, 14-hour days would then have to go through the absentee ballots. They will now be processed at the courthouse. So you're going to see a cleaner and quicker process. I think it's better for the voters, and it's much better for our poll managers who are out there working the polls, and thank God for them. They do such a good job in getting the good and clean and fair elections done here in Mississippi. But the resolution boards will now meet at the courthouse to go through the absentee ballots on Election Day.
So they won't be counted until Election Day here in Mississippi?
That's right. 7 p.m., just like it's a regular voter. So after 7 p.m., they can start going through those votes.
We talk about your PPE and everything else. So how safe will elections be on November 3rd?
Look, I'm glad you asked that question. It's one thing that we've been asked quite often across the state. And when we go through our list, and our team got together early on, we talked to clerks, we talked to elections officials from around the county level, you talk to legislative leadership, we talked to people, again, just people all over the state, and said, look, what's going to be the safest, cleanest way to run this election? What do you need at the precinct level? And so we've got PPE from masks to gloves to face shields to obviously we're going to have hand sanitizer for everyone. We've got single-use styluses and pens depending on what type of machine you vote on, so you won't have to touch anything. We're going to hire extra poll managers to wipe down the surfaces, the doorknobs, the machines. You're going to have sneeze guards at many of your precincts. So again, you won't have a lot of interaction face-to-face with many people when you go vote. So you talk about all that coming together, and it's going to be a clean and safe environment to go vote. I think Mississippians will be really happy and pleased with what they find once they go to the precincts.
But masks are not required to vote.
Right, so masks for voters themselves. Again, this is a constitutional right to go vote. So I believe it is unconstitutional to force someone to wear a mask, to deny them a ballot just because they do not have a mask on. That said, what we did was in our administrative rules dealing with our poll workers, we are requiring our poll workers to wear masks. Again, that's a voluntary position. You're coming to work a poll. That's where we can put rules in place. And again, they will have masks on. You will see the sneeze guards. You'll see face shields. The polling place will be a clean and safe precinct for Mississippians to go vote. if you go to a poll and you see someone in there that doesn't have a mask on that is voting, if you're not comfortable with that, then just wait your turn and let them leave, and then you can go in. So I think we're going to have a clean process, and Mississippians should feel safe when they go vote.
Are you encouraging people to wear a mask, voters to wear a mask?
We are strongly encouraged. Again, I think this is a conservative mindset. As Mississippians, we care about our families, we care about our neighbors, and so one thing that we can do to help stop the spread is to wear a mask when you go vote. It's not harmful, it's not going to hurt you to put a mask on just to walk into your precinct and cast a vote. So again, we are strongly encouraging that, but under the Constitution, I do not think you can force someone to wear a mask to vote.
What are you expecting on election day as far as lines on election day? We've seen in other states, if it's early voting, where people are waiting hours to vote. What are you anticipating?
Yeah, so again, I think the preparation piece is key. We have seen counties do things earlier in this year's election than typical.
Talk about the census a little bit. Where are we on the census? And now that the court's saying that we got to wrap up the census now, where are we as far as Mississippi? How well have we done as far as getting information in?
You've seen the court battle over that. And unfortunately for Mississippians in this time span, you know, you've had these dates move back and forth where it's confusing individuals. And so originally we saw October 31st, then to September 30th, and October 5th, and October 31st again, and now back. So we've had to kind of be flexible. We've been on TV, on radio, on print, Facebook and Twitter, making sure Mississippians understood the importance of this. Listen, if we have just the response we had last 10 years ago, 61.3% response rate, if we don't get back to that, or even if we do match that number, we still stand to lose about $13.2 billion over the next 10 years. You talk about roads and bridges, you talk about education, you talk about health care. So important for Mississippians to respond to that. And again, as of yesterday, it was only 60.2. So we've done our best. We've encouraged Mississippians to respond. I know we work with the Mississippi Municipal League. We talk to our supervisors. Until we're blue in the face, we have tried to get the word out. So it's just unfortunate that Mississippians haven't responded at a better clip.
And why do you think Mississippians don't respond like they should?
You know, I think there's a sense of, gosh, I don't want Big Brother getting my information. And I think you see folks need to understand, look, this is constitutional. This is in the Constitution. Your data is kept secret for 70 years. So they don't aggregate, or they aggregate the information. It's not individuals' information they're looking at. They put all these numbers together. So Mississippians, again, need to understand the importance of federal dollars. Now, look, I wish we didn't need that much federal dollars, but unfortunately, that's where we are right now. So again, you have this situation that's constitutional. That we count our census, or count a number of individuals every year or every 10 years. So having that data is so important for us. And I think Mississippians just, I hope it's not laziness, but you never know. Because again, we have 3 ways to do it now. You can do it online, you can do it by phone, or you can do it by mail. So it really doesn't take that much time. I encourage all Mississippians to make sure they do that before the deadline.
So when we look at those numbers, they say we have X amount of people living in a community or in the state. We believe there are actually more people here than what we're seeing.
Oh yeah, look, with our response rate being, again, 61.3 10 years ago, we were at 60.2 now. Not all Mississippians are taking this serious enough, in my opinion. So there are more Mississippians that aren't being counted. We lose out on funding simply because they didn't take the time to respond to the census.
Should we have more time to collect that information?
You know, with COVID, obviously that pushed everybody back. I wish and I had hoped once they set the original deadline that they would stick to that, because there's value in clarity, making sure people understand, hey, look, this is the deadline, and it allows us to make for plans. But when you start moving that date forward and back, again, it was tied up in a lawsuit. It's unfortunate because people get confused. I've encouraged everyone we talk to. I was in Oxford the other day at the Rotary Club, and I said, look, don't wait. Just because they say it's October 31st today, tomorrow they move it up to October 20th. You don't know. Don't wait.
When we come back, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, one-on-one. This past week, we went one-on-one with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, the first of 2 interviews with the 2 people running for U.S. Senate in Mississippi. I asked the senator about a number of issues, including why she's not debating her opponent, Mike Espy, and some past statements that are still generating controversy.
You know, the debate about debates is usually the most interested person is a losing candidate and news reporters. Mississippians are more interested in what I've been doing in Washington, D.C. and how busy I've been to try to rebuild this economy to help us through COVID. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have been in Washington, D.C. doing our jobs that the people of Mississippi elected me to do.
There remain questions about statements that you made in the past. I want to show a picture of you on your Facebook page back in 2014 when you posted this picture in a statement on your Facebook page. It said, I enjoyed my tour at Beauvoir, the Jefferson Davis home and presidential library located in Biloxi. And this is a must-see. Currently on display are artifacts connected to the daily life of the Confederate soldier, including weapons. Mississippi history at its best. Question for you, is this really Mississippi's history at its best?
That's Mississippi history, and it's displayed in a very good manner. And that's what I intended to let you know that day, that it is displayed very well. And if you have not been to Beauvoir, I encourage you to go. It's on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, it's in Biloxi, and it is a museum, and I tour a lot of museums. And, you know, that's just something that I like to do, is look back and study history of Mississippi, and it's displayed well. And we do have things that we're not proud of in our past, but it's displayed, and it is Mississippi history.
Is the Confederacy of Mississippi's history at its best?
It is displayed very well at its best in that museum.
In 2018, in the run-up to the special election, you were heard making this comment. In the state that had so many lynchings in this past of black men, 2 years later, do you regret making that statement?
We've addressed that 2 years ago. The people of Mississippi are concerned about what we have done since we've been elected the United States Senator, and even since we were appointed the U.S. Senator. We have done a lot of things. The first bill that I ever even introduced was signed into law by President Donald J. Trump. We have put ourselves on some really good committee assignments. We worked hard to get there. I'm on the Agriculture Committee. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. I'm on the Energy Committee. Things that are important to Mississippi, much more important than something that was addressed 2 years ago.
Do you think the Supreme Court with Judge Barrett to overturn Obamacare? Would you support that?
That decision is based on pure constitutionality, if it's constitutional or not. And let me again be very clear. Pre-existing conditions have to be covered. I have never wavered from that. We live in Mississippi. We have so many pre-existing conditions. I look forward to a bill that we can vote on that makes sure that people who need affordable health care, they have total access to it, and that it will include pre-existing conditions.
Well, Senator, I see you support pre-existing conditions, but there are other areas that the Republicans and Democrats agree on. Do you support a bill that would keep children under the age of 26 on their parents' health insurance?
When that situation is needed, certainly. I look forward to a really good health care plan that we can all support, that we can bring both sides in for people that can afford that when they're in the position that they need affordable health care, which all of us are. One of the things that really is so important to me is affordable prescription drugs. You know, I'm the one that went to the Senate floor, and I'm the one that carried a receipt of eye drops that cost $450. I made a poster made of that receipt and went to the Senate floor, live C-SPAN, talking about affordable prescription drugs, and that will help the overall healthcare system greatly.
What about no lifetime caps on coverage? Would you support a bill for that as well?
We would have to look at that. Those that need certain provisions, we want to address each category that needs certain provisions, but it just needs to be reasonable. It needs to be something that both sides have an input in, that we can be proud of and that we can work toward, but mainly that it would cover pre-existing conditions and would lower drug prices.
Let's turn our attention now to COVID-19. The cases appear to be trending upward here in Mississippi, and we're heading into flu season. That said, the issue of masks is at the forefront. Health experts say they can control the spread of the virus. Do you support a national mask mandate?
Well, 85% of the death rate has 85% of the death rate has decreased by 85% since April. So we're going in the right direction. I personally wear a mask. You have to peel it off of me. I go through 3 airports twice a week. I go on multiple airplanes. I follow CDC guidelines. I've been tested negative, but I am very, very careful. So if CDC guidelines to me tell me that I need to wear a mask, I personally will wear a mask, but I will go by their guidelines.
Would you support making a COVID-19 vaccine part of the vaccination regimen that all school children must take before they return to school?
I'm not the one that makes that decision. I'm not a public health official. I think that we need to leave that to the public health officials that have the medical degrees, which I do not. But I certainly want my child to have the vaccine.
There were 3 weeks out from the election. We talked about 20 days. You were talking about, or so, a little less than that. The country is without a new stimulus package. Last month, you voted on a stimulus package that didn't include a direct payment. Congress can't reach an agreement on a stimulus package, but if reelected, would you vote for direct payments?
I have voted twice already before this short recess on a coronavirus relief package. The Democrats blocked it both times. And, you know, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. The businesses out there, they still need help making payroll on many circumstances because we have not recovered from this.
What specific item is holding up the stimulus deal that's the roadblock here?
The election. The Democrats killed 2 attempts of getting the stimulus package out that I voted for both, because they are not going to allow anything that would give President Trump a win or Republicans a win. And that's basically your answer, is the election. And hopefully we can get up there, we can get something passed, and we can continue to address the dire needs, because like I said, we are still in the middle of this pandemic. We're not nearly out of the woods. People out there need help.
Medical marijuana is on the November ballot here in Mississippi on 2 different proposals. Do you support the initiative 65 or 65A, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state?
I support law enforcement 100%. Law enforcement is opposing this. I have always said, let doctors prescribe medical marijuana if they want to do that. Let that be left up to the FDA, the people that regulate that. I oppose this. You know, we have had such an opioid crisis in this state, and when law enforcement tells me this is going to compound those things, we don't need any more of that.
You can see the full interview with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith on our website, WJTV.com. And coming up next week, I'm talking with Mike Espy in an interview which will air as part of a primetime special on Friday, October 23rd at 9 p.m. right here on WJTV and WHLT. Legalizing the medical marijuana is on the ballot in Mississippi. It's a divisive issue. And this past week, the state held its last public hearing. 12 News' Alex Love reports.
Angie Calhoun, a mother to a child who relied on medical marijuana treatment to save his life, was the first to speak, saying this vote could be the difference between life and death for many.
If it weren't for medical marijuana, where would your son be today?
I truly don't know. He might be dead.
At age 17, her son Austin fell ill with chronic Lyme disease attacking his nervous system. She was forced to relocate him to another state where she witnessed regulated medical marijuana treatment.
We went to see a doctor who certifies medical marijuana patients, and then that is sent to the State Department of Health. They will issue a medical marijuana card. Every form is not smokable, and inhalation helps people who have chronic nausea and vomiting.
Some form of medical marijuana is legal in 34 other states, but members of the Mississippi State Board of Health, like Jim Perry, spoke against all bills allowing it, accusing the industry from out of state of promoting addiction.
Section 2 of Initiative 65 specifically gives the big out-of-state marijuana companies, any of its officers, owners, operators, employees, contractors, and agents immunity for any criminal or civil sanctions. Some of my friends say we should legalize marijuana and tax it like we do cigarettes or alcohol. The specific language of Initiative 65 would make that constitutionally impossible.
In the wake of medical marijuana under Initiative 65 making it to the ballot, legislators responded with their own version, Alternative 65A. Though this has no clear list of qualifying diseases, it would operate on a capped budget through taxpayers.
This is the question of whether we will choose unelected bureaucrats to hand out permits to a $14 billion industry on the one hand, or, as 65A would provide, entrust our elected officials to do their jobs in a way to set public policy as we do in every other area of our lives.
Dr. Thomas Dobbs also spoke in favor of Alternative 65A, but another doctor pointed to bills for medical marijuana brought up over the last 20 years and never getting anywhere.
We'll be right back. Thanks to Secretary of State Michael Watson for joining us. I'm Byron Brown. Join us again next week for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.